Good afternoon and welcome to the webinar. Thanks so much for joining us today, and hopefully you'll enjoy some good food here as well. So I'm joined today by Chris Kuriger from Arctic Wolf. He'll be doing the bulk of the presentation today as we talk about daily practices to secure our IT. So it's kind of interesting because there's a number of different things that need to be done on a regular basis in order to keep both the security in the first place and then to keep our IT secure. Since these things tend to waver when attention is not given to them. So we'll go through some of those things today, some of the tools. So a lot of times we have a lot of tools, but it's that practice of utilizing those and the care and feeding of it sometimes kind of wavers. So we'll try to look at some of those things today as well as some tools. So after I'll do some of the introductions, so then Chris will be jumping into how do we kind of maximize the potential of the tools that we already own? Then we'll take a look at incident response. So attacks certainly happened, but let's take a look at how do we respond to those things. We'll look at vulnerability management as well as the people aspect of our organizations, often the weakest link, or can be our strongest allies, as we've mentioned there. And then we'll have Q&A at the end, and I'll mention just a little bit more about that in just a moment. Okay, I hope you have your pizza in front of you. If your pizza hasn't made it here shortly, just note Julie Dellinger's email address on the screen. Julie can try to help you with any pizza conundrums, but you may want to just give them just a few minutes in case the driver is trying to find your office or your home if you're working from home. A lot of times we find in offices that the office door to the lobby is often locked. So you may want to check on the other side of that door, see if there's a driver there if you haven't received it yet, or wherever food disappears to in your office. Check there. Okay, during the webinar, a little bit of housekeeping here. So the first is that audio is in presentation mode, so you'll be able to hear me as well as Chris here in just a moment. But we sadly can't hear you, but we do that so any noise where participants are does not come through to the whole group. But you can reach me at any point through the chat tab. Just share whatever your thoughts are there, your questions. If it's questions that you want Chris to answer at the Q&A session at the end of his presentation, just put those in the questions tab. I'll read those out to Chris after he finishes his presentation, and then we'll be able to provide those answers to you. Or if there's not enough time, then having them written allows us to be able to then get back to you with those answers. So we want to keep this educational and make sure your questions are answered. This presentation and the recording of the webinar will be sent out to you later today, so you'll have that, so you don't have to write furiously. And then finally, there's an evaluation which you'll receive after today's session. If you can just take about 30 seconds to 60 seconds just to fill that out, let us know how we did, but also what additional resources that you might need to try to help you out. There's several things that are suggested there on the evaluation, or you'll just let us know other things that might be helpful to you as you secure your environment. And we'll draw from the completed evaluations for an Amazon $50 gift card, just to make it a little bit more fun and to say thank you for spending those 60 seconds to let us have that feedback. Okay, just a little bit about System Source. So many of you are longtime friends of System Source, which we appreciate, and others are new friends. So just a little bit about us. So we've been in Baltimore, headquartered here since 1981, and we work with clients from South Central Pennsylvania all the way through Maryland and down into the DC area, as well as national companies that have headquarters in that region or in this region that I just described. And so we work with folks, a lot of times they come to us when they need to acquire new technology. And so that can be either on end-user computing side or in the data center side. And most of our work, probably 80–90% of our work, is done in that data center, whether it's the traditional on-prem or cloud variants or other variants like colo centers, those types of things, wherever you might put servers, storage, networking equipment, security-related devices or software, wherever those types of things live that make sense for how you want to support your environment, deploy your applications, etc., including software as a service. Regardless of where you want to put those things, we support across those modern data centers, which goes from on-prem through all these other cloud and other colo types of environments. So in the cloud, we do extensive work in Microsoft Azure as well as Amazon Web Services. And So we're really looking for those data center types of problems to be able to put together solutions for those, deploy those, help support those. So we'll work with vendors like Arctic Wolf for security, Barracuda as well, VMware, the whole Microsoft stack, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, Cisco Meraki, and a number of other vendors. People acquire because they need to improve. So I mentioned just a little bit about cloud services, and our consulting is where our top level consultants design solutions for data center and deploy those and support those. But we also do training with about 600 plus courses at any point on our training schedule. You can check those out online. So all the technologies and vendors that I just mentioned, plus about 2 or 3 dozen more. Present is professional AV, so all the Teams rooms, Zoom rooms, WebEx rooms, all the monitors, projectors, microphones, speaker systems, digital signage, etc., that make those spaces work in our hybrid work environments today. So those can be either from conference rooms, presentation centers, executive offices, huddle spaces, and similar. And finally, we maintain all the things I just mentioned about, either on a you call us when things go bump under service and support, and so kind of a reactive model, including after hours. So if you need after hours support, whether you have a contract with us or not, it doesn't matter. You can follow the voicemail prompts after hours and access our on-call staff, or on a proactive basis under managed services, where we are the IT department for dozens of clients in this region. That's a little bit about System Source. We do have some upcoming events, and those are on the screen there. So tomorrow we have one on Power BI. So if you're looking at reports or dashboards, you might want to sign up for that one. On Thursday, if you're either a pickle player or an aspiring one, most of the folks that are coming to this event are either beginners or have never played. So this is just an open house sort of thing, no presentations, no PowerPoints. But if you fancy kind of doing some PowerPoint, you may want to look into that. The pickleball will be up in the Hunt Valley, Cockeysville, Maryland area. And on the 21st, we'll be looking at proactive steps required for cybersecurity, cyber insurance claims to be paid in full and to minimize premiums. So not only the premiums, up front, but what if you've had a claim? Now what? So how do you kind of address that issue? And so we'll be diving into both sides of that on the 21st. And with that, let me hand the reins over to Chris, please.
There we go. Thank you, Chris. I appreciate that. My name is Chris Kurriger. I'm a senior sales engineer at Arctic Wolf. Been at Arctic Wolf about 4.5 years, and we've seen a lot of growth in both Arctic Wolf as a company, but also in the cybersecurity market, the maturity of companies, and some of the methodology that people are using to keep their networks secure. So I'll talk a little bit about that today. I have knowledge from a number of different areas of the security and IT industry. I started off working in the MSP scene, so working with managed services. I've worked on the security side of some copier services, but then also deeply into security at Arctic Wolf. The first thing that I want to talk about is really the fact that there are a ton of tools out there. There's really over 3,000 tools in the security space right now, and adding more and more tools can cause more problems than it does solutions. A lot of people want to get the right tools in place, but then they're not sure exactly what the steps are to make sure these things are configured, make sure that there's not going to be an issue with those tools as they're moving forward. Strengthening those tool practices means that you've got to have expertise in the tools, and you want to make sure that you're putting the eggs in the right basket when it comes to the dollars that you're spending, or when it comes to specifically how you're using those tools. One of the things that we see a lot of time is alert fatigue, where there's just a ton of alerts coming from these tools, and the majority of them are not important. So making sure that you're getting the right things out of your tools, but then also continuously reviewing configurations. Office 365 conditional access is my favorite one to pick on when it comes to configurations, because Microsoft changes the way that those configurations work. They change the names of things all the time, and staying on top of that is important to make sure you're actually getting the most out of what you pay for. I talked to a number of organizations who have Microsoft E3 or E5 licensing and aren't really using all of the features or benefits there. So something that you really have to stay on top of. Getting attacked, regardless of the tool set that you have in place, is really an inevitability. Whether or not that attack causes serious damage to your business is up to a number of things, but really the way you respond to that attack and the things you have in place to respond to that attack are some of the most important pieces. These are just some statistics about businesses in the US and the likelihood that you'll be hit with one of these types of attacks. Doesn't necessarily mean that you'll suffer a full ransomware or that you will have data leakage or send out a check to the wrong bad actor, but it's happening to every organization across the globe, but especially in the US as well. We're seeing that on an increasing basis. So the number of dollars lost every year to cybercrime has been going up faster than really the tools can keep up, or faster than the solutions that we see being put in place. If there was any one kind of magic bullet solution that would stop even these three major, or really even just one of these major attack types, that company would be a billion-dollar organization overnight. The truth of the matter is you've got to continue to work in the right direction, continue to make sure you're shoring up your security practices, and pay close attention to trends in the market. That does mean that you've got to have kind of an ear to the ground as well. So having a dedicated security team or having security expertise is a big piece of that. Incident response has to be operationalized, meaning you can't just have a document sitting in the filing cabinet somewhere, or maybe a USB stick in a safety deposit box at the bank that details what you're going to do if there is an incident. A lot of companies I talk to, the first thing I ask is, do you have an incident response plan? They say, oh yeah, we've got one. Well, when was the last time you reviewed it? And sometimes I get crickets. Or, you know, can you put your hands on it today? Really making sure that what you've got in place fits your business, whether that's right sizing any IR retainers, or making sure you have an organization that can deal with specifically the challenges you're facing. If you have certain compliance regulations, making sure your IR provider is prepared to deal with the potential penalties of breaking said compliance. If you were to have something like a data leak, can be extremely important. But also planning and being active in your IR plan or in your IR development is super important to making sure that when something happens, you can actually hit the ground running. Doing things like tabletop exercises or just overall reviews, and making sure that you have all the right stakeholders in the room when there is an incident is something that can change whether or not you see a major incident, lots of downtime, or if you can react quickly and maybe you have a half a day's downtime and you don't lose any data. Cyber insurance is there to really help make sure that businesses don't take too large of a hit if something inevitable does happen, but making sure that you're eligible for that cyber insurance, or making sure that your premium hasn't gone through the roof, are things that you have to work through in your planning, in your tool sets. And you want to make sure that cyber insurance is actually enough for a total replacement cost. You know, if you were to lose all access to your data, or if your business were to be down for, I think the average for ransomware right now is about 21 days, would your cyber insurance cover the losses you'd have there? Most of the time, people just kind of pick a number out of a hat, and you see maybe it's $1 million policy or a $2 million policy, but it's important to do an evaluation and make sure that that number is the right number for your organization. The last piece of incident response that is often overlooked until an incident happens is really root cause analysis. If you have an incident, a lot of organizations or a lot of compliance regulators are going to look at, you know, this type of thing happens. We understand that. But firstly, what did you do to prevent this? Secondly, how are you going to make sure this doesn't happen again? So knowing that you can find where a bad actor came from gives you the peace of mind that you're going to be able to keep your insurance, or that you're not going to have large fines from external organizations or maybe vendors that you work with. But it also helps to make sure that you know the bad actor is out of the environment. If you're not sure how the hacker got into your infrastructure in the first place, it's going to be very difficult to make sure they're out. It could mean re-imaging a lot of servers. It could mean changing every password to every service on the entire network. It could mean a lot of different things that could take a lot of time. Whereas if you can pinpoint the point of intrusion, you can do some resilience exercises to make sure you're hardened, but also really limit the amount of time you're having to spend in incident response as well. Another way to make sure that you're hardened against a lot of the attacks that we see on a regular basis is looking at vulnerabilities. The Center for Internet Security releases their top 18 controls on a regular basis. The newest one has continuous vulnerability management at number 7. Continuous can mean a number of things to a number of people, but really what it means to, or for most organizations, is that you can no longer do a vulnerability scan every 6 months or every year and say you're good there. There are brand new vulnerabilities coming out on a daily basis. So if you have a vulnerability that's open for 5.5 months, that's way too long of a window for bad actors. So making sure that you're not just playing whack-a-mole and putting in patches on Patch Tuesday without knowing how they affect your systems, or having to update systems when you get a new firewall saying, oh, we didn't have the newest firmware, or things of that nature. You want to make sure that there's a plan. And so having that plan in place is a multi-step process. The first thing is you've got to constantly discover vulnerabilities, making sure that you know what the vulnerabilities are, where they are, and what effect or what impact it could have on your organization if they're exposed or if they're exploited, is the first step to being able to know what you need to do next. Unfortunately, there are very few organizations who can say, hey, we have 0 IT or cyber vulnerabilities. Most of the time, there's going to have to be an acceptable level of risk there, but you can assess to find out what level of risk is acceptable, how are we mitigating that risk, or how are we working against making sure that that risk is not an open door, but more of just something that is an operational hazard where you'd have to watch out for. But then, of course, continuing to harden the network is really the last step that sometimes gets overlooked. If you've got these vulnerabilities listed out, if you have a good assessment of which ones are important, then you can jump in and make sure that you're taking care of high and critical vulnerabilities right away. You'll want to make sure that you have a time frame set for each level of vulnerability. So if it's a critical vulnerability on a critical system, maybe that's 24 or 48 hours before it needs to be hardened as a policy. Something that's a medium or low, perhaps you'd have a couple of weeks to maybe even a couple of months, depending on your organization's risk tolerance. But making sure that there is a policy in place for those can help you to understand when something may have gotten out of configuration or out of plan as far as vulnerabilities that you do see on the systems you have. Of course, one other thing that's not really listed here, but is a big piece of hardening, is reducing that risk surface. So if you've got unnecessary systems, or if you have unnecessary exposure to the internet, that's a big part of hardening as well. If you see that this server is very vulnerable, but nobody ever has to access it who doesn't have access from inside our building, there's no reason for that to be externally exposed, and that's an easy way to take those vulnerabilities off your plate. Threat intelligence is one of the hardest pieces for any security operations center to keep up with. There are so many ransomware and bad actor groups in the world. There's nation state actors, and then there's just kind of your weekend script kiddies, as we would call them, or people who don't necessarily have a strong performance or a strong ability in cyber hacking, but that it's a hobby for them. So that all these people are constantly working to develop new exploits, to find new ways to get around security controls. And it's our job as security researchers and as security intelligence firms to make sure that we have all of the details about what's actively being exploited. Active exploits can change from week to week, definitely change pretty broadly from year to year. Even though the type of exploits that we're seeing, things like ransomware or wire transfer fraud or business email compromise, are some of the things that are pretty much standard. Those have not changed a whole lot. There are always new ways that people are looking at. Bluetooth hacks, there's been a number of, over the years, hacks that are actually targeted at cell phones. So if your cell phone gets compromised while you're out and about at a public event, and then you go and sit down at your work desktop, place your phone next to it, and you've got Bluetooth on that desktop, you might not know it, but that could be an opening for a bad actor. So researching these types of things and making sure that you have good guidance on where the risks are and what risk tolerance is going to be reasonable for you. Maybe you don't need Bluetooth, maybe you do for what you're doing in your organization, but understanding that that's a good place to look is something that's important to have threat intelligence for. So organizations that are trying to do their own threat intelligence generally have a pretty difficult time keeping up with that. You need to have dedicated individuals. When you look at companies like Arctic Wolf, we do have a full department for threat intelligence who's doing threat research, not just on our data sets for our customers, but across the world, so that we can provide things like that. And you can get that from an outsourced vendor as opposed to something that you have to just read every security newsletter that comes out. I read tons of security newsletters, and I probably miss 95% of what could be out there. So it's really difficult to keep up with. Having somebody to do that for you is almost a necessity. When it comes to your users, they're definitely not reading threat intelligence bulletins. You may have a couple that do, but most of them aren't. The majority of end users don't think that security is a real concern for them. They think, maybe I don't have access to important systems, or my job's not important enough for it to be a problem. I've talked with a number of users at organizations like HVAC companies who are technicians, and they think we don't have access to anything, but then they do have back-end access into the payroll system. Just because they don't have access to change what people are getting paid or change wire transfer numbers, they actually have the ability to jump into those systems, and that could be something that a third party would exploit them for. When somebody's looking at security or employees, you think a lot of times about HR or about accounting, but it's important that your users understand that every user in the organization is part of the security fabric of that organization. Some of the common issues that we see is the employees just don't want to do security training. They roll their eyes. They think that this training is the same thing that I saw last year. I've heard all this before. None of it applies to me. Sometimes there's a lack of reinforcement, or the training just comes out randomly. It's never a fun thing when you get assigned a 2 or 3 hour training right before you're trying to get off vacation for Christmas holiday or something of that nature. So people want to be able to expect when these things are coming in, and then that makes it difficult on administrators. Honestly, IT professionals are going to push the security training to the back burner much quicker than pretty much any other project they're working on, because it's something that, while important, is a smaller piece, and they're going to have to worry about that when they get done with this new ERP project, or worry about that once we've done the desktop refresh that's coming up. We've got network down issues today. We can't worry about sending out security newsletters. So not having assistance and help there is something that is a big issue or a big problem for a lot of organizations. Then on top of that, having multiple vendors involved. So having training coming from different areas, or that might be redundant, or still maybe missing some pieces, can be a really big challenge as well. At Arctic Wolf, we've taken a look at traditional training approaches versus really some of the newer, better reinforced approaches. And you can see here the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve is science that basically shows if you train someone, they're going to forget about 80% of it within just a few weeks. If they're not reinforced, if they're not using that, they're not going to continue to take that knowledge forward into their day-to-day. That's something that they're going to have to maintain on their own, and it's not a big part of their job. Well, if you get a continuous engagement model and you're constantly refreshing or constantly reinforcing that training, then that's something that you'll be able to rely on them really internalizing. So that's a big piece of it, but also having a lot of training all at once can be an issue. Micro-learning is one of the solutions there, and it's the way we do things here at Arctic Wolf. Whether you're using Arctic Wolf training or doing training on your own, this is something that's a lot less friction for users. They're a lot happier to spend 3 or 4 minutes on a session than they are 3 or 4 hours anytime. I can even tell you from personal experience, I've got trainings that I need to do for some of our upcoming product releases, and they're a couple hours long. Those are on the to-do list. They're on the flagged or pinned list in Outlook. But my security trainings that are a couple of minutes, those got done right away. It's so much easier to take a 3-minute break than dedicating 2 or 3 hours. So having that on a regular cadence can make sure that you do have higher participation and better buy-in. So users aren't going to mind as much, and especially if you can keep things light. Our sessions are generally a little bit silly sometimes, but having a little bit of humor in there, making sure that it's not all doom and gloom can be a big part of making sure that the users are not just trying as hard as they can to avoid their trainings. Phishing simulation is something that every employee dreads. When you come into a new organization and you fail a phishing simulation within the first couple weeks, you're like, am I getting fired? How is this going to affect my long-term prospects here? Doing that phishing simulation is important because phishing is one of the main ways that bad actors get access to an organization, but making sure that your employees have good reinforcement when they do click on something is equally important. With Arctic Wolf's phishing simulations, when you do click something, it's going to pop up and show you, hey, here are the things that you could have looked at in this email. Don't panic, this isn't the end of the world, but next time, look at these few things. That's a great way to reduce the repeat offender rate so that when somebody clicks a phishing email, that's going to stick out in their mind. They take this little 2 or 3 minute remediation session, and that's going to make them more likely to be critical of emails in the future. Sometimes you'll be overcritical. I talk to administrators who get a lot of, hey, is this phishing in their inbox every single day? But almost everybody would tell you it's better to have to go through a whole bunch of false positives than to have one true positive where somebody gets access to a back-end system, or you have a data leak, you have some sort of breach. So having the employees be a little bit gun shy when it comes to emails can definitely be a good thing. So all of this comes together into that operationalized approach that we talk about, making sure that you have awareness and the right behavior going on contributes to having a culture of cybersecurity. So if your users understand why the software is in place, why they have to use multi-factor authentication on their phone, if they understand how the risks exist for people maybe pretending to be a UPS person and trailing them in through the main door, they're less likely to let people in. These things have to be reinforced so that they understand the reason behind it, and then that allows them to feel like they're responsible for the organization and feel good about doing the right thing. When you're ingraining that into your day-to-day, or when you can get people to work together, then that's where you get that true culture. If somebody says, oh, I don't have to badge in today, I'll just squeeze through, and you've got other employees who say, yeah, but if you don't do that, that's setting a bad example. You can have that reinforcement there. I mean, I've seen it in the workplace in a number of places where people will say, oh, well, I don't need to badge in, and then somebody will prop the door open for 15 people. If you can get somebody else to stop them and say, hey, think about this, if we prop this door open, who's going to come in behind us? That's culture for you. And that's really where you want to go with your security training. So how does Arctic Wolf help here? If you are studious, you may have spotted some little icons as we went through that I littered in throughout the presentation of some of the different services that help with the pieces I've been talking about today. But I want to go over really how we operationalize those things, and then I'll talk about what the services are briefly. We want to make sure that we're taking people on a security journey and not just trying to put a Band-Aid on an ouchie. Really having a concierge team who's going to look at things like your overall prioritization of your security controls or of your security threats, making sure that they're doing deep dives with what we call spiders, that stands for Security Posture In-Depth Review, can help to make sure that you're actually improving your security posture over time, where it's very easy to just kind of get into a grind, but then focusing on things. If you have an attack, if you narrowly avoid a ransomware, or if you have an email address get compromised, being able to sit down, take a look at that root cause, take a look at what you can do to improve the likelihood that a bad actor will get caught in the first place can be a good detour. When you see something, say something is something that we say a lot around Arctic Wolf. We didn't invent that, I'm sure you know that there, but it's a big piece of security. And so when we see something, we want to talk about how it happened, why it happened, and then do additional discovery. From there, we can continue really this journey, ensuring that you're not going to have issues over time, ensuring that you're eliminating your blind spots. And then as you can see kind of over on the right, reducing overall risk, which makes you more insurable, can save you money on premiums, and can make things just easier in general. We provide security operations teams at Arctic Wolf because we understand that it's not just about the actual monitoring or just about the alerts. If it was just about alerting, you put 50 tools in place, you'll get an inbox full of alerts and you can spend all day reading those. Nobody wants to do that. We provide what we call a concierge security team to be your security expertise in your back pocket. So those individuals can help you over time or just as needed to answer security questions, make sure that as you're making upgrades or making changes, that security is top of mind. And when you're looking at how does one thing affect other aspects of the organization, these experts can pinpoint where other people have had pitfalls or problems in some of the upgrades or changes that they've made. They're going to be your guidance on that security journey, but it also requires a village to really keep an eye on all of cybersecurity. So that's why we provide our triage team as well. That triage team is made up of over 1,000 individuals sitting in our 4 North American security operations centers who are 24/7 looking at every alert that comes through our SOC. When we look at the number or the volume of alerts we're actually getting over 9 trillion observations. So that's just individual data points. Out of those, we're getting thousands and thousands of alerts per day. For each customer that I work with some of the smaller market customers, small to medium market. It's easy to have 300 or 400 alerts a week, maybe more. So having that team to actually review each one of those helps you to not miss the needle in the haystack. You can see some of the certifications our teams hold over on the right here, and that's part of why we have the retention rate that we do for our customers, because we're making sure to provide that additional value through both of those teams. We've put together a platform to make sure that things don't fall through the cracks. When you talk about data ingestion, a lot of times you're looking at just an endpoint, or you're looking at your cloud or your identity provider, but you may not be ingesting things from third-party apps like Salesforce or Office 365. You may not be ingesting things from your wireless access points or your firewalls. So ensuring that all of that goes into the same platform can give you what we call that single pane of glass, to use an overused term there, but can make sure that you have that full picture painted. Because if you have one vendor looking at cloud and network and another vendor looking at human data and endpoint data, and they're not talking to one another, there can be things that are easily missed. Good correlation requires great engineering staff, but we've also implemented AI to do that. We have our Alpha AI in the background that helps our security operations center engineers be more efficient and reach decisions and outcomes as quickly as possible. So if they see a new alert and they want to say, show me all the alerts that are related to this, we can pull all that together very quickly. They can get large volumes of data where they don't have to slog through and read the individual logs to get trends and see the information that they might need. The concierge model, through assigning those teams to you, and the security journey are a part of the platform overall. But on top of that platform, we are delivering really 5 main services. These 5 services are what it takes to make a true security operations center, but every customer is different in where they are in their security journey. So we're happy to meet our customers where they are, whether that's looking to improve things on the endpoint and make sure that you don't have users downloading malicious files, or you don't have people potentially exposing their endpoint to ransomware, that we have endpoint security that can really help our customers to lock those things down. But the broader managed detection and response allows you to add those other log sources, really get the overall threat intelligence that gives you access to that concierge team, and the 24/7, 365 monitoring of the entire environment. Managed detection and response is what we've done for the longest here at Arctic Wolf, and it's still one of the hardest challenges that customers are facing today. Managed risk really brings that same level of service into the continuous vulnerability and risk management space. So in accordance with that CIS top 18 control number 7, that ongoing scanning, ongoing benchmarking can help to make sure you're not missing any of the open doors or windows. If managed detection and response is the bouncer at the front door, managed risk is a security system making sure you know that the windows did get locked, that the back door is not ajar, and things like that. Security awareness, I've talked a bit about already today, but fully managed security awareness can help to make sure that teams aren't overwhelmed and give that consistency to users. Plus having a proven and tried program that you know your users aren't going to push back too hard against is something that's pretty low-hanging fruit when it comes to security, but very important. About 90% of incidents involve a user either clicking on something they shouldn't have or ignoring something that they should have reported. Honestly, I think that statistic's probably a little bit low. Users have the ability to really interrupt these bad actors in a number of different places. So if you're training them what to look for, that's where they do become your biggest asset. Incident response, we have a few different ways that we can help you with incident response, but we see the traditional retainer as being a little bit outdated. Spending $30,000 or $50,000 on hours that you may or may not use is not the way that we want to do things here at Arctic Wolf. So we really work with our customers to make sure there's a built-out plan, that they've got the expertise in their back pocket should they need it, and then that they have reasonable rates for incident response should that be something necessary. Obviously, the first four services are meant to prevent incidents. I'd love to tell you that you put our services in place and you're 100% bulletproof, but the truth of the matter is there are always 0 days. There are always insider acts that could cause an incident. So making sure you're properly prepared there is something that we can help you do as well, something that we can really line out exactly what you might need in that category. That makes up the Arctic Wolf platform, but we're there to provide additional threat intel, additional resources. Please check out our website. There are a lot of great resources there. We release our annual threat intel report, and there are also some quarterly reports out there. So if you want more data, we have it available for you. And of course, reach out to System Source if you'd like to have a deeper conversation with me or with any of my colleagues. We'd be very happy to provide you whatever information you might need.
Thank you very much, Chris. I don't have any questions in the questions tab at the moment, but we'll give folks just a moment to put some things in if you have some. Just a reminder, there is the evaluation that's coming in. There's a place that you can just ask for additional resources there as well, and we'll be happy to provide those to you. I don't see any coming in there at the moment. So I want to say thank you very much to Chris. Thank you to each of you for your attention today. I hope the pizza was good as well. And we look forward to seeing you at another session in the future. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.